actually a last question here, my friend. Everyone in crypto says you are the Web3/AI godfather. Do you like that title or not?
So, yeah, I am the godfather. So, for those who are not familiar, before Crypto Journey, I was actually doing machine learning research, AI research. I worked at Google across natural language understanding, question answering. If you ask questions on google.com, we actually build models that were facilitating those answers. And I worked on the technology, which is called Transformers, which is actually transformed the world and pretty much is the T in GPT. It's what powering the ChatGPT, Midjourney, and all of the current innovations in AI. Now, I left Google to start a near AI startup. It was an AI startup that was teaching machines to code, and it was pretty much trying to innovate on how we interact with computing. Yeah, I mean, so the background, Near started as an AI company, right? And we actually were doing data labeling crowdsourcing, and we needed to pay people. Very simple problem. Pay a little bit of money to a bunch of people around the world. And this is like 2018. There was Bitcoin and Ethereum, but already even then the fees were too high, right? We're paying like, maybe a couple bucks a day or something to students. And the fees were like $5, right? More than what we're paying. And so we saw an opportunity to okay, well, can we build something that's truly scales, can facilitate this programmatic payments, ownership, and is easy to use, right? Because at the same time, being technical, I can understand how, what hash is and, why, we should use last 20 bytes of the hash as my public address. I still think that's strange, right? I still think that, if I cannot remember my, username on chain that other people can use, it's strange, right? So we put a lot of work in how do we build usable blockchain that actually scale to 1 billion users? That when there is 1 billion users, the fees are not exuberant, right? But actually still stay at the same full number. And there are a few different things we've done to enable that, right? So on a protocol low level, it's a sharded blockchain, meaning that we can actually increase capacity of blocks but as more demand comes in. And so subsets of the network are validating subsets of a block, which rotates which subset of validators validates every block, right? So every block you sample new random set of validators and they validating this part of the block. What this allows to do, as I said, is as you have more demand, more users come in, you can actually increase the block size, right? And if there's less demand, you actually decrease, right? So you need less and more validators proportionally, but there's fees being paid, so you actually have economic incentive to grow and reduce the network size. So that solves a lot of the this complexity that right now, most of the blockchains are running on one machine, right? If you think of it, yes, there's a lot of nodes, but they're all doing the same work. And so you're limited by what one machine can do. And Near is not, right? You can have a lot more state, so all the state problems go away. You can have a lot more bandwidth as well, because you can have transactions going to different shards, and you can have a lot more processing, transactions per second. Now, that was just fundamental, we need to have that. Coming from, Google usability, we put a lot of work in account abstraction, right? Near accounts are named accounts, like mine is, root.near. See, really easy, you can go use it, right? We have lots of different keys that you can have from different devices to access this account. There's different permissions, right? You can have a key that, only can transact once a day. You can have a key that, maybe limits how much money you can spend per day. You can have a multi-sig on your account. All of that is programmable, available from there. You can have meta transactions, right? So applications pay for your transaction fees. And so because of this, Near became the most used by daily and monthly active users chain, because it's really easy to hide the blockchain and integrate it into existing Web2 applications with massive user bases, because it's so easy to onboard people and not put all of the complexity of the blockchain to them. So that's been probably biggest differentiator, beyond the kind of this fundamental sharding design that we've seen. And then on the developer side, we have used so-called WebAssembly, which is virtual machine that's used in every browser in the world. It's supported by Mozilla, Microsoft, Google, and it allows to run Rust, it allows to run JavaScript, Python, pretty much most of common languages, there's a way to run it. And so that kind of opens up all of the, I would say, limitations that usually people have when writing smart contracts. And so Near hosts the most complex smart contracts in the world. We actually have an Ethereum EVM running as smart contract on Near. So we have another chain as just a smart contract on Near. Just to give you an example of complexity and performance that you can get. Traditional AI startups are struggling, right? They need to raise at lots of money at high valuation, and then they cannot justify the amount of revenue they bring kind of in the next year or two. And so it ends up being kind of this weird valley for them where they cannot raise the next round. And we've already seen this with even a few prominent startups, right? They kind of ended up being sold off / teared to scraps. And I think this is a real challenge that's gonna hit a lot of folks in kind of traditional AI. Just valuations were too high, the revenue recognition is not coming as fast, right? There's a lot of open source, so people choose to build their own stuff, even enterprises, instead of buying. At the same time, I think there's fundamental issues where we need to address, right? Around data, around kind of access to compute, around how privacy works for your personal data, how creators are rewarded.
When they're training these models, right, it starts with data. And in the case of data set, right, somebody somewhere decides what goes into the data set, right? If you just scrape the internet, there's a lot of weird stuff going on the internet. And somebody decides that we're gonna not include this information. Do we include the QAnon website? Do we include Alex Jones' website? Do we include Truth Social, right? All of these are decisions made by some team. Now, there's a legal team that also decides, oh, this is copyrighted, we know we want to include it, this is illegal, there's ethics team, we don't believe this is ethical, we don't align with this. And so all of this affects how your model works. And you have no understanding how that happened. You have no, as a user or developer, you have no visibility what went into this model. These models are statistical at the end, and they pick up the bias that you have in the training data. Now, even worse, when after the model already trained, there's a bunch of the same legal and ethics teams that are actually affecting the outcome, right? They're actually biasing the model's output depending on what is the current kind of decision-making made. And now, on top of this, these models are expensive to run. And so right now, you're assuming that the output is coming from a model, but actually it can be coming from an ad, right? They can actually run an ad on you and figure out what would not be the best answer based on data, right? You're like, well, hey, give me a review of all the cars on the market right now. It can be, hey, it's from training data, here's the different options. Or it can be like that, some manufacturer paid this company to prioritize their output. And so this is a case for user-owned AI. This is really about how do we have models that are not trying to profit a company, a corporation, but actually are on your side and actually able to deliver you the value, be aligned with your personal and kind of financial, health, mindset reasons, and be able to be kind of serving you and defending you from kind of the attack of the rest of the world. So there's a whole stack of technologies that need to happen for this to really be realized. And it kind of spans from data to infrastructure to applications. There's a lot of applications, but I'll cover a few very specific things just to give you an idea how this works. So first of all, it starts with content, right? A lot of data right now being scraped from internet, but the thing is now, because people know that this is happening, you actually can start poisoning training data for the future models by putting incorrect content or biased content into the future training data. Right now, if you just start posting stuff on Reddit, the Google and other companies who buy this data from Reddit will now be affected, and the model will respond differently based on what's happening. And so what you want is you want an ability to have a cryptographic reputation of the data. You want to have this information available. You want the community to be able to actively kind of comment and provide context for any of the information. The best kind of closest example for this is community nodes on X, where you're able to see different opinions about somebody's like popular tweet. And so you can have similar idea using blockchain, using cryptography to really link the content. And again, importantly, this is not like pure AI problem. The misinformation been existing for forever, right? You can literally create misinformation by just editing a page, in Inspect in your browser, posting the photography of that on Twitter, and people now confused and concerned, right? So this is kind of an important tool in general for preventing misinformation and misleading. Now, next step is the kind of creator economy that's happening right now that is based on the attention, the advertisement model, right? The TikToks and New York Times and other platforms. They're all based on somebody posts the content and then a lot of people look at it and there's ads intermixed into this and then creators are rewarded. It's going to get disrupted by AI, right? AI models will be pretty much consuming all this content and then reinterpreting it pretty much with AI model to give you personalized output, right? Your news source will not be New York Times anymore. It'll be your personal model that read New York Times, that read Reuters, that read Bloomberg. And so how do we reward creators in this new economy, right? And right now we have all those lawsuits actually trying to battle this out, but they're missing the core component, which is a way to distribute reward to these people. And so the idea here is we have creators, be that author, the photographer, like graphic designer, photographer, musician, who contribute data to a broader data network. All of this data then is used to train models, and the models are paying kind of royalties to the users, so that models pay royalties back. And now we distribute those royalties based on how novel the data is. And this is important because it's different from traditional method where you distribute based on how much views that got or fixed fee. You're now distributing based on how novel the information is for the model. So that's a kind of data contribution network, data curation that needs to happen as well in pair with cryptographic reputation to really kind of affect and clean the data going forward. There is another piece which is provable inference, right? Right now, when you go into ChatGPT, you're entering your request, you have no idea what output you're getting. Is this output from a model? Is there like an if statement somewhere that says if your email, output this? If, for example, you're trying to analyze some trading or some financial information, maybe somebody's trying to affect your decision on the other side. You have no idea. And so provable inference is this idea that you want to have a proof, an ability to verify that the output actually came from a model that you asked it for. Now, the challenge with this is that it's extremely complex already to get an inference from a model. It requires a lot of hardware, and it's also non-deterministic because of different hardware has different architecture of implementing floating point operations. And so it's really challenging to achieve this, and so it's only valuable for operations where you are making financial decisions or maybe health decisions, and probably not as important for cases where you are trying to shitpost on Twitter. So extremely important use case. There's a lot of companies working on it, but also extremely complicated. We have an amazing advancement in technology, right? I mean, I've worked on AI, I've been excited about these ideas from, age 12. And the kind of challenge we're facing in front of us is that for-profit companies have this extremely negative incentive because when they make a decision, they will always make a decision how to generate more revenue out of the user, how to make more profit. And this leads to manipulative behavior. This leads to, trying to use more of your private data. And it's, kind of negative, like Black Mirror type outcome. And we have now Web3, which is a tool to disperse ownership, to have coordination of people, to have something where we don't need to continue post new growth revenue. We can have people owning and deciding how the protocol should evolve. And so we are at this kind of fork in the road, and I'm just encouraging everyone to continue seeing how we can contribute to going into the more user-owned direction and really benefit from kind of building this out, even though it will take some time and it will require to build new infrastructure to really build kind of truly user-owned open source AI.